Well, here we are yet again, ladies and gentlemen, with yet another Mega Man 8 review video. Except this time, it's complete, and I have more experience with the game, so some of my criticisms and praises of the game have underwent a couple of changes. Mind you, the first time I talked about this game was 2019, and despite revisiting the game on and off over the years, I never gave the entire game a comprehensive shake until just now in 2024. That being said, how has Mega Man 8 held up nearly 30 years later? Yes, it has been that long. Can you believe it? Anyways, that's the question we're going to answer today. Do be aware that this review will have spoilers. To start, I want to acknowledge that Mega Man 8's legacy is pretty accurate for the most part. The criticisms levied against it over the years, such as level design being stagnant, special weapons being underutilized, the sprite work being a bit too busy, and more still ring very true. However, I want to touch on what it got right before we dive into what it got wrong and the hows and whys of it all. So, to kick things off, Mega Man 8 has a phenomenal soundtrack and art style. I know I just mentioned that the sprite work can be a bit too busy, but its busyness comes from the fact that it's so well detailed and stylized. If they somehow can manage to take the art direction of Mega Man 8 and rebalance it with the clarity of the graphics found in Mega Man 7 and Mega Man 2, the Power Fighters, you would get something pretty close to the definitive classic Mega Man art style outside of the signature 8-bit graphical package. The colors are deep and vibrant, the world looks like anime landscapes brought to life, everything has volume to it, and none of the decorations look out of place. A good example of how solid the artwork is would be Frostman's stage, where the player travels across a highway stage that looks like the opening stage from the first Mega Man X game as snow begins to fall more and more with the daytime changing. You see the city light up in the background at night with traffic moving, and it simply is amazing to look at. It is one of the rare instances in the classic Mega Man series where you see a city looking alive and sort of giving you a look into Mega Man's world. Aquaman's stage also is beautiful as you enter a serene underwater base or plummet down the lens of a crystal clear waterfall. And accompanying these tantalizing visuals is an amazing soundtrack that has a wonderful mix of minimal techno, lounge jazz, and deep house that makes for a diverse yet coherent album. Next to the complete work soundtrack that was also used in the Mega Man arcade games, this is one of the richest sounding Mega Man soundtracks in instrumentation and composition. Just take a listen to some of what this game has to offer. Now, while visuals and music are most certainly important to a game, they're not the only important components to one. You also have story, gameplay loops, handling, difficulty curves, and whatnot to be concerned about. And in regard to those areas and many more, Mega Man 8 really takes a sharp nosedive. But to understand its shortcomings, it is crucial that we get some historical context for the game laid out. Mega Man 8 was one of the first Mega Man games to be published on 32-bit consoles and was released in Japan during the December of 1996, with a North American release following close after in the January of 1997. Around this time, the gaming industry was beginning to see a jump into 3D gaming, and 2D wasn't really seen as a cool kid on the block anymore. This is one of the reasons cited as to why Sonic Mania, if released for the Sega Saturn back then, would not have saved the console. 2D was well established, but no longer novel. 3D was the newest and exciting thing. Unfortunately, this led to a lot of great 2D games at the time sort of getting overlooked. However, I would say that Mega Man 8 is quite a ways away from being one of them. The producer role for Mega Man 8 was given to Inafune after Fujiwara, who held the title of producer for Mega Man 2, had decided to leave Capcom in 1996. Two versions of the game were released, with one being put on the Saturn and the other on the PlayStation. Interestingly enough, due to the PlayStation version being released before the Saturn version, some content such as extra bosses and alternate music that is present in the Saturn version is completely missing from the PlayStation version. Yet one could argue that those small bonuses were not enough to save Mega Man 8 from itself regardless. With that background detailed, let's dive into some of the more surface level issues with Mega Man 8 before getting to the core ones. To kick things off, we have the voice acting.
I've never seen this type on Earth. I don't know where this energy came from, but you cannot let it fall into Dr. Wowie's hands.
I think everyone who knows about Mega Man, and in particular Mega Man 8, has heard about its voice acting. Normally, voice acting is seen as whatever in a video game, since it, along with everything else, typically comes second to gameplay. However, in Mega Man 8, I believe the quality of the voice acting reflects the nature of the rest of the game. hollow, lazy, and done from a place of obligation. And yes, I am talking about the English dub here since I don't speak Japanese and wouldn't be able to tell what good Japanese VA work sounds like. The voice acting that is present in Mega Man 8 is woefully bad. I am not sure if the voice actors were stand-in volunteers or if the developers actually went out and tried to find legitimate talent, but the sheer lack of genuine enthusiasm and effort is astounding. Characters either talk like they're recovering from a bad hangover, are undergoing the worst phase of puberty, or have zero interest in being a part of the story. The worst offenders would be Duo and Dr. Light, being closely followed by the likes of Bass and Mega Man. And all of the robot masters sound like walking stereotypes of the worst kind.
I'll crush you! I will beat you!
You've got no chance!
Unfortunately, the voice acting is only made worse by the laughably cheesy lines that were written for the game. The dialogue reads like something out of a 10-year-old's first-time self-insert fanfiction with characters standing around talking about the quote-unquote evil energy and how they need to go after strangers that they have no knowledge of but should pursue anyways because why the hell not? You need some action in a story after all, right? This is where the voice acting, story, dialogue, plot pacing, and everything else cross paths. The story in Mega Man 8 is just disgraceful. Whether the game is meant for kids or not is no excuse. The first 7 Mega Man games managed to have simple yet compelling plots that served as an understandable backdrop to what the player was doing. Mega Man 8 on the other hand has a premise that seems really promising, and honestly it's not a bad premise whatsoever, but the developers of the game seem to not be very interested in actually, writing a story of any kind, which makes it all the more baffling that they put animated cutscenes into the game, most of which serve no purpose and take up precious disk space. The only cutscenes that are actually crucial to the game in any major way would be the fight between Duo and the evil energy robot that leads to the evil energy arriving on Earth, and Mega Man discovering that Wily's base is surrounded by a barrier. Both of these cutscenes could have just been shown with the in-game graphics, mind you, and probably worked just as effective. Instead of using the animated cutscenes to show us things that maybe we can't see in the levels themselves or give us more context to Mega Man's world, we instead get treated to laughably bad dialogue as we're shown forgettable interactions or repeated information that was established in a cutscene using the in-game graphics. Never before has potential ever been so squandered. And the plot itself would have greatly benefited from just sticking to being something simple rather than trying to tie in some giant animated narrative that only served to bloat the game. Instead of having incredibly awkward interactions between Mega Man and Duo or having Dr. Light go on and on about the evil energy along with Duo, they could have just handled the story like Mega Man 4 and 5. And it's even more frustrating that a lot of content that got relegated to animated cutscenes could have just been gameplay segments that would have been far more impactful. Fixing the story, which also ties into the gameplay progression, would have been as simple as this. First, open the game with Duo and the evil energy robot, give him an actual name because that description sounds corny as hell, battling and then crash landing on Earth. Second, Mega Man and Bass are fighting in the center of some city. Make this a stage. We had a city opening stage in Mega Man 7 that looked pretty similar to the Metropolis stage of Mega Man 2, the Power Fighters visually, and Mega Man 8 already has spread art for a city setting from Frostman's stage. It doesn't need to be a super long stage or even a proper intro stage, just make it a playable fight. There have been few Mega Man games, if any at all, that directly open with the battle and it would change up the pace of the game from others a bit, but not too much. Third, after the fight, Mega Man gets a list from Roll who has a message from Dr. Light about strange energy readings he's getting from a nearby island. Mega Man goes to said island with Rush and finds Dr. Wily messing with something in an impact crater. It's an evil energy orb. So far, the only animated cutscene we would need is Roll picking up Mega Man and the message from Dr. Light aside from the Duo space battle. The cringeworthy dialogue between Bass and Mega Man could be completely cut out since whatever they say could just be represented as an in-game text bubble conversation. Fourth, Wily declares that Mega Man will not interfere this time with his new plans and claims his new robot master army will put a stop to him. Dr. Wily leaves with the energy orb, Mega Man ventures a bit further into the island, so we would be extending the intro stage by a bit, and finds a down Duo who has crash landed from space. Being of kind heart, Mega Man asks Dr. Light to pick up Duo and repair him. This would introduce why there are new robot masters, show us how Mega Man first finds Duo, etc. without awkward gaps in storytelling or bloated animated cutscenes that could much more easily be covered by in-game gameplay that theoretically would take up less storage space. Fifth, Mega Man goes and defeats the first set of robot masters that are trying to stop him and picks up some evil energy orbs that they drop after being defeated. He is then called back to home base because Duo has woken up and escaped from the repair room. I think this is fine, but the cutscene between Dr. Light and Mega Man, if it is to be animated, needs to be far more concise and understandable. This is also where I think that the entire quote-unquote evil energy concept should have been thrown out the window. It's cheesy, it's cliche, it's lazy, and frankly, it's stupid. Give the energy a proper name, give it proper context, make us understand why it's such a threat, etc. Even if it was called like chaos energy or some sort of virus that had the ability to power things up, but also make them behave erratically or something of that nature. Literally anything. We got the Maverick virus and Robenza and other titles, so I know that the people at Capcom obviously have more creative prowess than whatever the hell led us to giving a plot point called quote-unquote evil energy, which the entire game revolves around. It just screams, we aren't taking this seriously and neither should you, the player, at the end of the day. So, for now, we'll call this reworked energy construct Chaos Energy. Yeah, I know it's a bad name, but it's the best placeholder I could come up with for the time being. And let's say Dr. Light finds out something about it beyond just evil energy likes evil people who are evil and love evil energy, or whatever nonsense that we're trying to sell the audience on. Light then believes that perhaps the seemingly irrational behaviors of the robot they saved, Duo, who just woke up and broke out of their home and left a hole in the ceiling, might be a victim of it or connected to it somehow. Now then, because of that, there now being a legitimate justification, Dr. Light sends Mega Man after Duo. Not because, well, he's strange and we don't know who he is, but go after him anyways, lol.
Mega Man, you must go after him. We don't know who he is, and it's dangerous to leave him alone.
Yes, sir! Let's go, Rush!
But because there's now a real level of urgency, Mega Man then tracks down Duo, who, not knowing who Mega Man is, assumes he's there to stop him from completing his mission of eradicating the Chaos Energy, and a fight ensues. And now I will say it. Give Duo a health bar, people. This has to be one of the worst things in the fight because the player doesn't know if they're actually damaging him or not. The only excuse I can think of is that it's a narrative feature. Since Duo is an alien robot, then perhaps Mega Man can't get an energy reading on him, and so you, the player, can't see his health bar. But it's honestly stupid since it impedes gameplay, and I don't think anyone played Mega Man 8 and went, wow, I can't see this guy's health bar. He is so much more mysterious now. Just give him a visible health bar and call it a day. Even if they wanted to get fancy and make the health bar look visually different in structure or color to signal that Duo is no normal robot from Earth, it would have been leagues better than just completely disabling the health bar in the game's code. 6. Mega Man fights Duo, he wins, and Duo reflects on his actions. Instead of saying some corny garbage like, I sense justice in you, he would instead be like, you're putting up a pretty good fight, but it seems you have no desire to seriously harm me. Perhaps I should have given you a proper introduction, and then Duo and Mega Man properly interact for the first time. Also, Proto Man just randomly shows up throughout the game for no discernible reason and just drops bits of exposition or filler talk that serve no purpose, unlike in Mega Man Base, where he nearly sacrificed himself in the intro stage trying to stop King. Welcome to Mega Man 8 with yet another hallmark of horrendous storytelling. Anyways, back to the game. Duo would break into the heart of the volcano and Mega Man would follow him into it to see Wily's new tower sitting in the midst of it. In a short cutscene, Mega Man gets accosted and absolutely obliterated by one of Wily's giant robots after the Mad Doctor taunts him. The player would then take control of Duo for a short boss fight against the giant robot, which would end with Duo destroying the threat. Mega Man recovers, picks up Rush, and heads out to find other robot masters after Duo and Mega Man discover that they cannot approach Wily's tower due to a barrier that the other robot masters are protecting. 7th, the rest of the game goes as planned with Mega Man taking out the next 4 robot masters, infiltrating Wily's tower, and then for a final boss, instead of having the game end on yet another Wily capsule, the player would have to fight the unnamed evil energy robot seen in the opening cutscene of the game just to give some well-rounded closure to the whole ordeal. At this point, we would have no more than 3 fully animated sequences and much more time for gameplay. Just in less than 10 minutes, we have found a way to make Mega Man 8's story more compelling, concise, and convincing by introducing some small tweaks, opting for more gameplay than poorly scripted dialogue, and giving the game a more coherent sense of what is going on and why. I have no idea how the people who are putting this game together struggled this much to realize such a basic plot. Even Mega Man 4, Mega Man 7, and Mega Man X had more going on, yet they were able to convey their narratives with less bloat and unnecessary distractions. But oh no, that's not all. Now we get to talk about the core of the game, the gameplay itself. I'm not going to beat around the bush about it. Mega Man 8 is sluggish, like lethargic beyond belief. Mega Man is well known for snappy, tight, pixel-perfect platforming that has the player sliding around at the speed of sound while serving lemonade pellets. But in Mega Man 8, that's completely gone. Mega Man jogs around everywhere at a sleep-inducing pace as if he has all the time in the world, suffers from a nerve slide, we're about to get to that more in a minute, and has some of the slowest startup on moves such as jumping that the series has ever seen. It's like the developers saw the gameplay of Mega Man 7 and said, I think it needs to be slower, mate, while also doing some contradictory shit in other parts of the game, such as the snowboarding sections, which we'll also get to in a minute. Mega Man feels okay to control, but he doesn't feel great to control. You don't get the same kick out of controlling him that you would from games such as Mega Man 2 or Mega Man 5. He honestly just feels like a spongy brick in Mega Man 8. Why the developers decided to do this? I really have no idea. Maybe they got feedback that earlier Mega Man games were considered too difficult, so to coincide with the newer level design philosophy, they decided to also slow Mega Man down and everything else. One of the common criticisms of Mega Man 8 is that stages are too long, however, I would have to disagree with this. Stages only feel long because of how slow the game moves. If you look at a stage where the game breaks its mold, which is only the snowboarding stages, the stage feels quite short and you realize it's a movement speed issue. For instance, chaining slides in Mega Man 8 feels awful because there's always a massive delay in timing, so you can never hit frames consecutively back to back after cooldown without a noticeable jerk in motion. On the flip side, this means you can sort of quote-unquote dash dance with the slide if you know how to cancel it in the opposite direction fast enough. This is satisfying to pull off, but doesn't feel intentional whatsoever. But it gets worse once you realize that the slide being nerfed is only a thing because the developer thought it would be a fantastic idea to lock better gameplay fundamentals behind a collectibles paywall. So now you have to go backtrack through stages with special weapons to pick up screws in order to get basic quality of life upgrades, such as having a better slide or a more reasonable charging time for the charge shot, among other things. Never before have I seen a more egregious implementation of a shop system in a game than Mega Man 8. It's literally on par with Sega adding gameplay movement sliders into Sonic Frontiers, but at least with Sonic Frontiers, you didn't have to collect rings or tokens just to unlock these options in the settings. I don't know who thought this would be a fantastic idea for Mega Man 8, but boy, if I did, they would definitely be getting a lecture. However, the movement and handling are just a symptom of a bigger issue, which I would argue is the level design itself. Normally, Mega Man games have levels that are built around clever platforming, quick wit, and speed. It tests your reflexes and bravery to jump and shoot like there's no tomorrow. It keeps you in motion and looking forward to the next platforming challenge. Unfortunately, in Mega Man 8, the game is littered with slow, monotonous puzzles, empty hallways, and crappy enemy placement. You often find enemies sitting directly on top of ladders, spikes being placed right overhead a platform that you're on the underside of, levels broken into winding maze paths that get tired the moment you figure out the gimmick, etc. The gimmicks are creative in concept, mind you, but the execution of them is downright embarrassing. Let's take for instance Clownman stage. The core of this level is built around a jack-in-the-box tower climb that sees you having to hop from box to box in between the rings of a bell, jumping in and out of them trying to teleport your way up the tower. This begins to get grating after the first couple of seconds. It would be a cool gimmick to intersperse throughout a stage, but having one of the biggest sections of the entire level entirely centered around this got boring fast. And not only that, but once the player figures out the box order for the stage, which might take a few trial and error attempts, the entire challenge is fundamentally gone for good. By the time you reach the top of the tower, you're left with a, well that's over now what type of feeling, rather than a, whoa my skill really saved my skin, or dang I moved and grooved that room like a pro, that as a game developer you want the player to feel. Other levels, like Swordman and Astroman stage, suffer from this as well. And then you have stages such as Searchman that just have a single purpose special weapon gimmick, not accounting for Wily Stage 1 since that has its own issues, or Frostman and Tengu Man stage where for 80% of them you're not playing Mega Man, but rather some spin-off gameplay type ranging from a Gradius clone to an auto runner. And that's now where we should get into talking about the infamous snowboarding sections, Frostman stage and Wily Tower stage 1. Need I say more? You know how people complain about classic Sonic games being too fast because they can't see what's coming at them, even though I would argue this is usually self-inflicted from misusing the spin dash, bar Sonic 1, which yes, is guilty of some bad level design, is still a common complaint and one that rings very true for the auto-scrolling snowboarding gameplay that Capcom decided to pack into Mega Man 8. What's worse in Mega Man 8 though is that while Sonic games such as Sonic Advance don't have a screen cap on your speed, meaning you can go off screen and the game will still register your position for landing on objects and platforms, Mega Man 8 does, and a very prevalent one at that. If you're going too fast to the screen and making jumps that the game deems to be quote-unquote too far ahead off screen, it will lock you in place and kill you. It actively punishes the player for playing well. This is the easiest to see in Wily's Tower Stage 1, where you can miss crucial jumps that theoretically you could have made but weren't allowed to simply because the game was scrolling too fast for the game's viewport boundaries and gets mad that you're playing to the pace of the game. It's completely moronic. Had Mega Man 8 been a title built for widescreen displays instead of 4:3 aspect ratio CRTs, then sure, maybe they could have gotten away with some super fast auto-scrolling levels filled with tons of blind jumps. But there is simply no excuse for this kind of garbage in the 8th entry of a well-established game series, and it doesn't help that this kind of gameplay is so prevalent yet is quite foreign to the Mega Man gameplay identity. When people pick up Mega Man, they aren't expecting to get Sonic Runners or Gradius 3, they're expecting to get Mega Man. And I wouldn't even mind the more derivative sections, along with the weird stage gimmicks in Mega Man 8, if they were just not so overused and over-implemented. What could have been an interesting novelty instead becomes grating and exhausting. Lastly, let's talk about the most important part of any Mega Man game, the boss fights, as if you couldn't tell from the trend and quality that the rest of the game has set, yeah, they aren't great either. They range from brain dead easy to gimmick heavy with very little variation in engagement concepts. A majority of the Robot Masters are simply combo food for special weapons, and some can be ended in under 20 seconds easily. It's not uncommon in this game for Robot Masters and other bosses to be about as lethargic as a player is, which is again because they slow down the entire pace of this game, with very little in the way of battle strategy aside from perhaps Aquaman, who unfortunately suffers specifically from having a poorly telegraphed move cycle beyond the obnoxious callouts. Some bosses will literally just sit in one place and not do anything at all. Some can be infinitely stun locked with special weapons, others will attempt to put up a fight but have moves that have such ridiculous startup and end lag to where you don't feel like you're in a dangerous combat scenario whatsoever. It's almost like every boss encounter sits on the extreme opposite end of Ringman's fight in Mega Man 4, aside from Aquaman and perhaps Searchman if we're being extra generous. The most glaring offenders such as Swordman and Bass will act like they're on break for a Sunday stroll. Some of the most pathetic bosses in the game actually come straight from the Wily Tower, notably the Tedamino, Blyking, and Bass fights. Atenamino has to be one of the most creatively bankrupt and stale boss fights that I've seen in the entire Mega Man franchise across all of the sub-series, and that's not hyperbole either. The entire fight sees you standing in a room with what's essentially piñatas hanging from the ceiling, separated by a few chunky columns with the goal of kicking Mega Balls around 24/7 like an erratic game of reverse pachinko, with the hopes that the game's Mega Ball controls are good enough to actually score you a hit due to the angling being super inconsistent between launches. So the piñatas show up, a few drop down, you kick balls to the walls, the piñatas blow up, maybe you hit the boss piñata and get some ammo drops, and that's literally it. That's the entire fight. I'm not joking, nor am I making this up. The boss fight starts and ends there. The walls don't retract, with the Atenamino maybe raining down missile fire, or having the piñatas drill into the ground on pistons, or having the lanes flip orientation from ceiling to floor, or anything. There's effectively no threat beyond, hey, some piñatas will drop from the ceiling, and occasionally shoot missiles, bouncy balls, and a little penguin doll, and yeah, that's all we've got. What's infuriating is that this trend is kept up in both the Blyking and base fights. Blyking is literally just a Graves boss that does nothing but occasionally fire lasers and drop landmines into the air, while base just... Okay, hang on, I need to give base his own section. They disrespected my man. Base is cool as hell, but in Mega Man 8, his boss fight is weak as fuck. They give the player this grand cutscene of base combining with trouble and an evil energy orb, making you think it's going to be some crazy Mega Man X level fight, when in reality it's no more engaging than the battle against Tengu Man, who arguably is more of a threat to the player than base is. And most of what can be considered the quote-unquote difficult part of Base's boss fight is simply the room size rather than Base himself. The dude will just leisurely float back and forth around in the air while occasionally shooting evil energy into the sky that rains down, and it's easy enough to avoid if you can actually see where shit is on the screen in the midst of all the visual noise, repeatedly screaming, "What?" like some surprised emo 13-year-old, taking slow shots at Mega Man with his buster, and hovering over the floor with a laser that can easily be jogged away from. While I do want to talk more about Base's fight and how easy it would have been to overall just improve the boss design in this game, I do want to touch on the final boss battle against Dr. Wily. It's Wily Machine 4 with the Beyblade attached. Quite literally. Wily just sits in one spot for the entire fight, taking up over half the screen real estate, occasionally throwing his Beyblade at you and evil energy into the air that has horrible readability, while attempting to fire a laser cannon that can be prevented from charging with a few lemons to the cannon. He doesn't fly around the room and have different bullet patterns, the Beyblade doesn't have different cycles between occasionally leaving the screen entirely instead of boomeranging back, there's no mixed phases anywhere to be seen. All you get is just Wily Machine 4 rehashed with less adrenaline involved. And one could argue that Wily Machine 4 is one of the more less impressive bosses in the Mega Man franchise, so having anything bobble after it isn't really a home run. And Wily Capsule 8 is more or less a rehashing of Wily Capsule 7, but done far lazier with less room for unique approach options. None of the special weapons in your arsenal are useful against Wily Capsule 8, and so you rely on your Mega Buster alone to get the job done, due to even Flash Bomb being useless. Occasionally shoot down at Wily when he teleports back into view, yet another thing taken from Mega Man 4. Chances are you'll be abusing Astro Crush for free invincibility frames and calling a Rush's Care package because for some dumb reason or another, Mega Man 8 decided to completely do away with E-Tanks that were better in every way, from their ability to sack, to also how quick they were to activate. Like, I'm sorry, but the minute that a player's offensive arsenal's best use case becomes free invincibility frames to handle randomized projectile sequences is the minute that the foundation of your game is called into question. I have never played another Mega Man game that made it so crudely apparent that all the stuff you math throughout the game was going to go painfully unused. You get to the final boss thinking, great, I can really put my entire arsenal to good work, before realizing that everything past Wily Machine 8 becomes effectively useless. I can only assume they did this to try and coax a player into the long and monotonous process of screw hunting, with the hope that the player would pick up one of the special charge shots in the shop. Despite quitting the screw hunting circuits at 22 screws, a little over half of them in total because the hunt became more of a chore than an adventure, I could have afforded the laser charge shot, but opted for restoring the slide and base charge shot to where they should have been from the get-go. While I'm going to close the review out with a little thought exploration of boss design, as I promised earlier that I would talk more about Base, I want to make a final note that I believe Mega Man 8 suffers from some of the same issues as Sonic and the Secret Rings, specifically when it comes to its shop and screw system. Secret Rings is often derided for being a bad game at the start and a better one by the end, simply because fundamental gameplay mechanics such as running were tied straight to purchasable upgrades that are required to make the game handle better. This has to be one of the worst decisions you can make as a game designer, but apparently Mega Man 8, Secret Rings, and a few other titles have done it in our lifetimes. Ultimately, Mega Man 8 is charming but insulting. It teases the player with beautiful art and music and then delivers one of the most draining gameplay experiences with an internal hollowness to echo it. I love Mega Man 8 for what it could have been, but for what it actually turned out as, aside from its artistic accomplishments, I can't say the same whatsoever. Okay, so here we are at the tail end now with a bit of time to talk about how Mega Man 8's boss design could be improved, using Base's fight as an example. So, got a couple frames here set up representing the room that you fight Base in, and kind of the constraints in which these fights happen. So, kind of thinking about the philosophy behind the way that Mega Man bosses are designed, I would say the best Mega Man bosses are ones that always make you feel like you are in danger, if that makes sense. And that can be done in the way of character expression, the way that they're animated, their moveset, a lot of different things. And I think in Mega Man 8, one of the biggest problems with a lot of the characters is that I think that their animation, their moveset, and just the overall energy they brought to the fight didn't really make the player feel like they were in immediate danger necessarily. Aside from, again, a few, like I think Aquaman, who I still believe probably is like the best boss that Mega Man 8 has to offer, even though that's not really a super high bar to clear. But anyways, so for instance, taking Base here, let's just talk about some of the basics such as movement, right? So in the Base fight, Base moves across the room here up in the air. He kind of just leisurely moves back and forth, right? So I'm gonna kind of draw like a wavy line. He's just kind of chilling, right? He's not really giving you, a look at a threatening figure. He's just kind of like, yeah, I'm taking this fight kind of like a joke, and you should too, and you should also kind of walk around down here, maybe occasionally sliding, and not really worrying that much. Occasionally shoot like some, evil energy up to the air, they'll come raining down here, and then you have to maybe step over because it will hit in one of the lanes here, and then it'll also then drop into one of the spaces right after, so you just step to the side. Not really that big of a deal. Granted, there is a lot of visual noise like I touched on, so I guess that's technically considered part of the challenge, maybe, I don't know. Anyways, so just about his movement going back and forth across the room, and instead of having him kind of just laze around the room, right, instead you'd want to have it where maybe, he starts here on one side of the room, and he dashes from side to side of the room, right, so it's not just a constant, dash here, dash back here. Instead it would be like, he starts up, and then starts getting pretty much has an immediate, really fast startup, kind of like I guess maybe think of a drag race, where cars are they start up, their engines start up, and then they kick off down the runway, right? So he starts up kind of slow, and then immediately just jumps across the room, right? And then slows down towards the end of approaching the other side, and maybe he turns around, keeping his eyes, down, here, we'll draw the eyes, keeping his eyes on the player wherever they are in the room, right? Kind of just again, making it feel like the player's being watched, that the boss is kind of keeping tabs on them. And then let's say occasionally, for one of his attacks, right? Instead of having him just kind of stand up here and shoot evil energy into the air that just kind of falls down and hits the floor in a kind of pathetic way, instead maybe he has a move where, he has these sweet wings on him. Maybe his wings, they light up, they start to vibrate or something, and this evil energy orb around him, or a sphere of energy forms around him, and he charges up a targeting dive, right, to hit the player. So this targeting system, maybe it'd be a little crosshair that follows the player around the room, so they have to keep moving on their toes, so they don't get hit by the super powerful attack. And then once he locks onto a position, again, the player's sliding around all over the place because they don't want to get hit by this. He slams into the floor, right, and causes the stage to shake. So something similar to Roy's special smash from Melee, right? And so you really feel this energy of this attack. It's a really devastating attack. Let's say that maybe it takes away I don't know, a quarter of your entire health bar. So it's something that can be easily telegraphed, so you can tell where he's gonna hit. So it wouldn't be something that's super damaging, but that couldn't be avoided. It's something that could be relatively easily avoided compared to other attacks. But let's say if you're playing super lazy and you're also taking a lot of unnecessary risk, if you get hit by it, you take a lot of damage points, so you kind of deserve it. And so the stage shakes and stuff, but then while he's down, say sitting on the ground, let's say that the base has moved to the ground, while he's down here, he would have an impenetrable shield for a little bit, right? That would be up around him on the floor while he makes that initial impact. So the player could shoot him and stuff, but they couldn't really damage him until that shield drops, and then he rises from the floor slowly, and let's say then his wings have a cooldown similar to the Covenant Carbine from Halo, right? It has kind of a cooldown effect that has some nice sounding to it, like a or whatever. And then he'd be open for attack for a few frames before, heading straight back up to the top of the room, continue to dash back and forth. Just right there, we have made a pretty active and threatening move added to his moveset, and also has again changed the kind of energy he's bringing to the fight. So instead of bringing this kind of like lazy, boring energy, and instead he's bringing this like very urgent, kind of like high tension, angst energy, right? You know, it's like you don't want to get hit by this stuff. And he's also showing you like, yeah, I'm fast. I am, you know, watching you. You know, he's ready for combat. Let's put it that way. So for another scenario, let's go ahead and quickly let's drag these players to another frame. So let's go ahead and move base over here, and we're also going to move the player over to the next arena, right? And so we're back in here, and let's say for an attack, instead of I gotta switch back to brush. Let's say instead of having him just kind of like lazily fire evil energy into the air that just, you know, falls down at one part and then falls down another part, and you simply step over or whatever once one has hit, instead what would be better is have maybe let's say while he's dashing back and forth across the room, maybe on each side he shoots out bullets in an array, right? And maybe this array goes through different patterns going in an arc each way, right? So for instance, on this side of the room, or actually on either side of the room, he could shoot out bullets in a pattern that goes like this, showers down this way, or he could shoot out bullets that actually shower out in the opposite way of the array, right? And this would obviously then create kind of like mix-ups. So he could do this from either side of the room. It would be a little bit randomized. This would keep the player on their toes as they're trying to dodge these shots from the top of the room. Instead of just having him just sit here on the floor, you know, like it does in the game, where he's just shooting like a couple pellets towards Mega Man. Actually, it's just 2. It's not even 3. It's just 2. Where you then just jump in the corner, literally against the wall. You do 2 jumps and you just jump over them. So instead, again, that's like another way that you can mix the moveset, have a more active, a more complicated attack pattern, right? You also could, instead of having him just, I'm trying to think like, what was another one of his attacks? Let's say, for instance, his laser, right? So let's show him, I guess, he would come down from the top of the screen, like right here, and he'd drag his laser across the floor this way. And let's quickly, here, hang on a second, I'm going to bring up the eraser really quick, and let's see if I can quickly get some of this out of the way. Okay, that is not the opacity eraser that I need, or I mean the hardness. What's going on? The hardness is a little way up. What's going on? Oh, the flow on the eraser is down. That's why it's not erasing. Okay, here. Let me get rid of this. And so let's say instead, go back to our brush, which is at 5 point. And let's say instead of him just coming down with his laser that just slightly drives across the floor, which you're just kind of jogging away from. Instead, what do you do? Is he could be here at the top of the room, and maybe he shoots out these missiles, right, that go off screen. So let's say he shoots out 3 of these missiles that go off screen. I'm actually going to remove these little lines so you can actually see this a little bit better. Probably don't want to leave some of the stuff here, so let me get rid of this. Could also just move to another arena, but I kind of want to demonstrate this here with the other stuff, because since we're talking about the laser. So he fires these missiles, that like 3 missiles, right? He does these 3 missile shots that come out, they fly off screen, and then maybe they come flying back across the screen at different heights, right? So maybe, and these missiles are coming flying back on the screen, they would be telegraphed by, say, maybe like beam lines. So let's say like right here, this would be like a sample zone, and then maybe like you'd have like a little flashing like warning sign that shows up to show you where that missile's gonna hit, right? And so then you have these missiles that come in at maybe different heights. So maybe you have it where like a missile comes here, and then maybe one comes up here, and then one comes down the middle. So then for the first one, say, then the player would have to like jump over it. For the second one, the player would have to, slide under it, and then the third one, maybe it's too high up. Actually, you know what? Actually, here, let's back this up. Let's say for the second one, you could do it this way. So you have 3 missiles. Let's say that all 3 go off screen, and so maybe the first one comes right here, the player has to jump, then the second one comes right up here, so the player has to slide, and then the third one comes back at the bottom, so the player has to slide. And then that order could be mixed up. So sometimes maybe it would be that the missile comes in at top at the player, and then comes into the bottom, and the missile comes in at top. Then you have that jump and slide, situation going on. Again, this is much more interactive than having the player literally just jog away from a laser that's being dragged across the top of the screen. Mind you, these are really simple concepts. I mean, I'm just making this up as I go along, and this, again, you can see that this brainstorming really is not taking that much effort. So the fact that they, for whatever reason, couldn't actually think of a moveset that would keep the player more engaged than having nonsense such as, I don't know, shooting evil energy into the air and just having it kind of plop down like raindrops, or dragging a laser across the screen, honestly, it kind of leaves me a little bit blown away. Like, again, this is very basic conceptualization. I'm not exactly sure how in the world they didn't put more effort into this, especially considering that there are other Mega Man games that have boss fights that are way more complex and just overall more cohesive and well put together, and keeps the player feeling like they, you know, are kind of like, it keeps them on their toes, kind of on edge. Such a Ringman's fight, which even though I don't really necessarily think Ringman's fight was done super well, it definitely keeps you a lot more engaged and active than anything that really Mega Man 8 throws at you, again, barring maybe Aquaman. And so then maybe another idea, just to kind of wrap things up. Let's say, for instance, we had, here, we're going to go ahead and move these characters over to another frame. Let's say we have Bass in Mega Man, and instead of, you know, him having this raindrop attack that's like super leisurely and you just step to the side, right? Because I think that's honestly completely lame. Let's say instead, okay, we don't want to be selecting that. Give me 1 second. Actually, no, we do. That is actually layer 1 to be on. Let's say, for instance, he shoots out this, instead of shooting evil energy to the side, let's say he shoots up like second stage missiles or something, right? Or 2-stage missiles. So he shoots with the missiles, they fall down at different points, right, into the ruins floor. And let's show them the ruins floor, right? So they've landed down here, right? And so you've managed to dodge them. You're kind of doing the jumpy jump, whatever. And then these missiles, they lock into the floor, and then they shoot out actually missiles again in an arc, different ways in the room that then you have to avoid, right? So they come down, rain down, then they lock into place, and then shoot up again, and then you have to dodge those, right? Again, you have a 2-stage attack. It's a lot better, and also another thing is that this could be mixed up. So maybe they shoot out, instead of always shooting out, you know, in a position to one side, they could shoot out to another side, right? Again, keeping things kind of in the moment. The player has to really work with what's happening in the present moment, instead of just being like, oh, I know that he shoots down raindrops, you know, every other position, and I know then to just step to the side to avoid the incoming one on the second hit or whatever. Like, this is, again, really basic, just conceptualization of how to improve bosses, and I'm really surprised, once more, that, like, no further thought was really put into the boss designs than what we end up getting. And sitting here, I guess, kind of as a, you know, a designer myself, and a game designer, because I have developed video games, I just can't really see what the reason would be to have a boss fight as, I guess, unengaging as what we got, especially when, again, Bass is a pretty prominent figure in the Mega Man series, and he's also Mega Man's rival, so you'd want him to feel like a legitimate threat. But that was just, again, not done. And that's pretty much kind of my ideas behind how you really can just make a boss fight more engaging. This is just for Mega Man. This is really for any video game. And think about, like, how do you keep your player, like, in the moment? How do you keep their attention? Like, you know, how do you make them feel like they are dancing to a tune, so to speak? And I think that Taco or Taco Trash from Mega Man 4, who I think is a boss of the, I want to say second or third Wily stage, maybe. I don't really remember off the top of my head, because I recently played Mega Man 4, but I can't really recall exactly what stage he shows up in, or I should say it shows up in. It keeps the player, you know, on their toes. It makes them kind of learn a dance, you know. You have like these like rotating platforms that go up and down the side, and the attack is over here, like shooting, or I should say Taiko is shooting like these giant balls, or like firing fire breath at you and stuff. Like, again, it makes the player feel like there isn't really a moment to just kind of stand around. Like, they're always kind of in motion. And I think that honestly is where Mega Man shines the most, is where you're kind of like learning this dance and you really feel like you're getting into a move and a groove. And so I think that was one of Mega Man's 8's biggest weakness, really, was the bosses. Next to the level design, I think that the bosses were just really underwhelming and poorly thought out. But all that to say, though, since I do want to leave this review on a, you know, a positive note, is hopefully this video has, you know, while showing you, you know, the flaws of Mega Man 8, I also want to make mention that I do like Mega Man 8, even though it does have a lot of flaws and there are a lot of frustrating elements about it. It does hold a special place in my life because I grew up with it with the Mega Man Anniversary Collection, because I didn't have a PS1 until years after, you know, the Anniversary Collection had hit the market. And, you know, I think that there's a lot to love about Mega Man 8 in terms of its art and its music. I think that's probably some of the best that we've ever seen in the series, at least in my opinion. But I do think that it really fell short in a lot of other regards, and I really would honestly personally love to see a remake of Mega Man 8, because I think it had a lot of potential. I really liked the animated cutscenes, even though I think they were not really applied the best in the final product that we had gotten. I do think that I would love to see a Mega Man game with an animated narrative that kind of has, like, you know, the vibes of like Astro Boy 2004, and, you know, I think there's a lot to see about Mega Man's World. There's a lot to love about Mega Man's World. And like even the intro to Mega Man 8, I mean, I still find it to be like, I don't know, it's promising, it's exciting, you know, you see all these Mega Man robots from past, or I should say Robot Master from past entries, you know, finally in like full-fledged animation, and like you're kind of like seeing like what Mega Man has to deal with. It's like, oh, well, this is so cool, I can see Mega Man and the whole gang, you know, in motion, and I think that was like really cool. But then you start the game and then things start to kind of fall apart, and it's like, what's going on? And I think a lot of other people had similar experiences from what I've kind of watched and read over the years. Yeah, that being said though, you know, if you love Mega Man 8, then like, that's great, because I love Mega Man 8 as well. And I think it's really important to kind of remind people these days especially that when looking at a product, you know, and criticizing it for its flaws, doesn't mean that you therefore then cannot enjoy the product anymore. Like, absolutely enjoy the hell out of it. It's just that, you know, it's really useful to be able to find where some things fall short, so that way you can, in your own ways, maybe make an improved product in the future, if you so choose to do, or other people can be. You know, that's kind of part of the whole research and development process. But anyways, thank you for watching this video on Mega Man 8, and I hope to see you all in another review someday. Amzro out.